This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Steve Leon is a partner in Showstoppers. Now in its 22nd year, Showstoppers creates media events for selected press analysts and key executives that are designed to generate news coverage, product reviews, promote brands, and open new markets. Showstoppers produces events at CES, CTIA, Mobile World Congress, NAB, and many other venues. Hello, Steve. Welcome.
All right. Thanks for having me.
We are delighted to have you with us. Tell us about Showstoppers. What is it and why did it start?
Oh, man, we started 22 years ago with a very simple premise. I worked for a small PR agency. I compared notes with a couple of other agencies where we all had 3 or 4 clients each at a trade show that no longer exists called Comdex.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a small problem. We had clients in 3 different buildings up and down the Vegas Strip, and we had appointments with journalists for each of those clients. And we hit on the idea of putting all of those companies in one place at one time, bring in some food, bring in some drink, and let the companies demonstrate their products and see how many journalists we could collect for 2 or 3 hours. And that turned into a business. It's now 22 years later.
What's your role with the company?
I'm sorry, say again?
What's your role with the company?
I am one of 3 business partners. I am the partner who is responsible for inviting the press, registering the press, talking with journalists, which is why I'm doing this interview. And I am also involved very heavily in business development. There are 2 other partners. Both happen to be my brothers. Bob is responsible for our logistics, the hotel room or other site that we use, the menu, the power, the lighting, things like that. The second other partner is Dave, and he is responsible for sales and also for business development.
Well, I was just reflecting, Mike and I were chatting about this before the show. There's so much competition for attention from the press and from individual users. How do you break through? How do you get people, how do you get the press to pay attention to your event? And then 2, how do you get end users to pay attention once the press is there?
Well, you know what? Let me turn the question around. How many trade shows have you been to? And what happens when 30 companies call you up and ask for interview slots and time slots? You know, what do you do? We think the Showstoppers format is far more cost-effective, time-effective for everybody involved. And, you know, the idea that you can do business, look at new products, put your hands on them for 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the event, and you walk out at the end of the evening with a stack of business cards, leads to coverage, leads to product that you want to review on air or in publication. You know, how valuable is your time? You can see 20, 30 companies in an hour at a Showstoppers event instead of walking up and down the trade show aisles for 3 days. We think that's a formula that works.
One of the things that we do, and we make a big point of covering NAB, is that we'll do live programming from the show floor, and we'll talk to anywhere from 40 to 60 on-air interviews during an NAB show, and we present them in periods of 7 to 10-minute interviews apiece. So our format is live broadcast. What is, when you say the Showstoppers format, what's that?
At its simplest, it is a large room, typically a ballroom, at a hotel. The Wynn, for example, in Vegas, or one of the exhibit halls at IFA in Berlin. And we fill the space with companies that have new products to launch, new products to demonstrate, a reason to talk with the press, and we set up tables. We run power to the tables, we bring in food, we bring in drink, and we open up the doors. We spent a lot of time prior to the event working with each of the companies that is exhibiting, sending out the invitations to the press, building a press list, things like that. The event is typically 2 or 3 hours. CES is a longer event. That's a 4-hour event for us. That's our largest event. We have typically 1,800 journalists in the room, typically 130 companies exhibiting. We've done smaller events with as few as 10 companies and 100 journalists. The idea is that as a journalist, you can meet with 10 companies, 30 companies, 50 companies, 130 companies, and put your hands on the product, get a demonstration from somebody who knows that product intimately and well, can explain that product to you, can walk you through the benefits, the advantages, how it differs from something that may already be out on the market. And then you understand the product well enough that you can do that coverage. At MEV, for example, which is I think where I last saw you guys, I think we had 30 companies in the room. I think that was 500 journalists for that event. And that was a 3-hour event. That was a large ballroom inside the convention center at Mandalay Bay, I think. Vegas gets confusing because we do 3 events there a year.
Well, Steve, hold it a second, because I want to come back to something. It sounds to me like the developers are your clients and the press is your audience. And
yes.
If that's true, what advice do you give to your clients, the people that have products to sell, to help them maximize their contact with the press? And the ultimate reason is to help our listeners understand what they need to know to work better with the press.
Oh boy, this is a series of long answers. If doing PR for a tech company, hardware, software, devices, internet services, any of those, the best thing you can do with a product, with a new product that you are launching, is demonstrate that to a journalist one-on-one, face-to-face. And there is nothing like being in the room with that journalist for those 5 minutes, for those 10 minutes, for the hour, whatever it is. That just gets rid of a lot of the resistance. It eliminates confusion. It clarifies the communication channel. Much more work gets done that much more quickly, that much more effectively in a shorter amount of time. If you're a journalist, your time is valuable. You're on deadline. You've got to get things figured out, written up, and on the air. If you're the marketer for that product, for that company, you want to figure out how to reach as many journalists as you can as quickly as possible. You can spend a week on the road, traveling from office to office, flying around the country. Or you can put yourself in a room full of journalists who have already been qualified as people that you want to shake hands with, and you're done in 2 hours.
Are these companies that are at Showstoppers, are they also on the show floor, or are they just at Showstoppers?
That's a mix. At some events at CES, for example, those companies are, some of them are on the show floor, some of them are not. At IFA, where we produce the official press event, that's the event in Berlin, those companies must exhibit on the show floor. That is, in part, that is the way we work with Messe Berlin, which runs the IFA trade show.
You've been doing this now for 22 years, and it sounds like you're working with smaller companies to give them a chance to break through and become visible, as opposed to the Sonys and the really large companies of the world. How have your exhibitors changed over time?
Well, first, let me go back a step. We have large companies in the room like HP and Microsoft and Samsung. You can't get any bigger than those. And we are known for bringing smaller startups into the room that journalists have never heard of, never discovered, and this is their foot in the door. How has this changed over time? Go back to my reference to Comdex. That's a trade show that doesn't exist any longer. But that is the trade show that turned technology into consumer electronics, into the Internet of Things, which is where we seem to be moving at this point, the technology evolves over time. The way it is delivered over time changes. And, I can't predict for you where we will be at CES in January 2016, which products are going to be flying around the room like a quadcopter, or which cameras are going to be shooting video, and in what format. But I know that I will have them in the room, and I know that I will have large companies doing those demonstrations, and I will have small companies that nobody's ever heard of before doing those demonstrations.
How does a small company approach you and convince you that you need to invite them to the event?
Please contact me.
No, but what I'm saying is, do you have criteria, or do they have to audition, or is it just a question of paying the fee?
It's a combination thing. Obviously we want to get paid for this. It's a business, right? That said, I am much more interested in companies that have a really good story to tell. Because if you're a journalist, if you walk into a Showstoppers event and you're bored and you've seen all of these companies before and you've seen all of these products before, you'll walk out of that room thinking that you wasted your 2 hours. If, on the other hand, I've got 30 companies in the room, some of those companies you've never heard of before, and they've got something that's relevant to what you cover, you're going to be fascinated. You're going to want to spend time at my event. Now, how I find those companies, we do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of outreach, we have a website, we have email newsletters, we have word of mouth, we have friends who introduce us, we take introductions, by email, by telephone all the time. We are happy to have the door knocked on. It is a process.
So diversity is really important to a show like Showstoppers, correct?
Yeah, and look at what you cover. I know you mentioned NAD most recently, right? We're talking film, video, on-air production, devices to do those kind of things. That's different from what happens at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. That's different from what happens at IFA or CES, which is much more about consumer electronics, but it will still have devices. It will still have mobile. It will still have video and audio and software tools, but the mix, the focus of those changes from event to event.
Any particular company in the, say, the last 10 years that you have introduced to the world that has changed the world?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I have a personal interest in... Let me go back a step. I am in the process now of remodeling a house. Mm-hmm. I'm not physically doing the labor. I have, a builder doing the work for me. But I have a personal interest in not what I would call home automation, but smarter home.
Sure.
So at CES, for example, I took time to meet with one of the exhibitors in the room. It's a company called Sengled, Sengled. They have an LED light bulb, but it's not just a light bulb. It has it has an intercom microphone built in.
Oh,
it connects to your router, and it has a motion sensor, and it has I think it's a 180-degree camera on it.
Oh my gosh!
So I can put one of these things at my front door, and I don't need a doorbell anymore. Right?
All right.
So
you sold me. I'll take that.
So I've got personal interest in things like that.
Yeah.
That said, if I've got at CES 1,800 journalists in the room, I can guarantee you that there are 1,800 different news beats, and I could not predict who's going to be interested in any one of the companies in the room different from any one of the other companies in the room.
That's true.
Well, I'm interested in that LED light bulb.
Yeah. Steve, where can people go on the web to learn more about you and your company?
Showstoppers.com, SHOWSTOPPERS.com.
That's all one word, showstoppers.com. And Steve Leon is a partner of Showstoppers. Steve, I'm really curious to see what the next hot product is at your shows, and I wish you great success. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Steve.
And if I could predict that, I wouldn't be in this business. I'd be really rich.
Take care. Bye-bye.